We're in the fellowship ring. We're gonna finish fellowship pretty quickly. To 362 in the Mirror of Galadriel. Why did Sam at the beginning of the novel? Why did Sam start eavesdropping? Why did he quit clipping the hedges and stuff and listening to Frodo and Gandalf? It's not that he is nosy.
They were talking about elves.
They were talking about elves. And he loves all stories of elves. He mentions, when they arrive in Lothlorien, something about elf magic. So, Galadriel says, I want to show you something. And she tells Sam specifically, this is elf magic. You might be interested in it. So, bottom of 361, Frodo asks, what shall we look for and what shall we see? She says, well, I can command the mirror to reveal many things. To some, I can show what they desire to see. Mirror Bear said, kind of a thing. Some, the mirror shows things unbidden. Those are often stranger, more profitable than those things we wish to behold. He says, what you will see if you leave the mirror free to work, I don't know. Sometimes it shows things that were, things that are, things that yet may be. Notice, but no pointing out which of those it is. She goes, you want to look? Frodo doesn't answer. What about you, Sam? This is magic. You want to see elf magic? And Sam says, yeah, I'll have a peep. If you're willing. Okay. Says, I'd like to see what's going on at home. So he tells us what he wants to see, and what does he see happening at home? Bagshot Row being dug up, his gaffer being kicked out of his house, walking down the street with his belongings essentially in a wheelbarrow, the party tree chopped down. Okay. In other words, all hell's breaking loose at home. And what does he think? There's some devilry at work in the Shire. Elrond knew what he was about when he wanted to send Mr. Merry back. I can't stay here. I got to go home. Lady, you can't go home alone. That is, you can't go. You did not wish to go home without your master before you looked in the mirror. Yet you knew that evil things might well be happening. Did he? Well, as a theoretical possibility, yeah. She says the mirror shows many things. Some haven't yet happened. Some won't happen. What's your implication?
Save the world, then sure it's not going to get burnt down.
Okay, what else though? Some things happen, why? Because we try to stop other things from happening. Law of unintended consequences. All right? Sam. He sits down, puts his head in his hands. It's kind of his way of going, damn, wish I'd never come. He actually says, I wish I'd never come. I don't want to see any more magic. No, I'll go home by the long road with Mr. Frodo or not at all. We might die in this. So, okay, so Frodo, do you want to look? Do you wish to see? He says, do you advise me to look? Notice the difference between Frodo now and Frodo at the beginning. Frodo, at the beginning, he says, I really do wish to destroy the ring. Or to have somebody else. In other words, he's kind of hot-headed. Damn that Gollum. It's a pity that Bilbo didn't kill him when he had the chance, etc. Now, well, I don't know. Do you think I should look? He's starting to back off his rashness and impulsiveness.
I kind of felt that way when he first met the elves.
Well, yeah, when he meets Gildor in the eaves of the Shire, so to speak. Why? Okay, he's asking me advice. Why else? Well, what news has Sam already brought him? Even before they leave the Shire. Black Riders are in the Shire. Looking for him. Okay? So, she said, I don't know, do as you will. You know, typical kind of counselor, psychologist-y person. Well, I don't know, Frodo. Do you really want to look? You tell me. So he looks. And he sees a variety of things. He sees way up north. He sees all kinds of stuff. And then he sees the mirror go pitch black. And then he sees a mountain. And an eye. Or he sees an eye. eyes rimmed with fire, yellow as a cat's, with a slit. And the eye starts looking here, looking here. And as the eye looks, Frodo gets closer and closer and closer and closer to the water. Pensive. Don't touch the water. She says, I know what you saw that last time. It's also in my mind. Don't be afraid. It can't find you here. Even as I speak to you, I perceive the Dark Lord and know his mind. And she lifts up her arms, and Frodo notices for the first time. She's got a ring on her finger. Well, why does he notice it? Because there's a particular star shining in the sky. And Frodo says, what do you wish? In response to Galadriel telling him, this is Ninya, the ring of adamant, one of the 3 rings Sauron gave to the elves. Okay? So now he knows where one is. He suspects, he's not sure. Here's what's going to happen, Frodo. If you succeed, this thing will lose its power. Its power will be diminished, Lothlorien will fade, the tides of time will sweep it away. We must depart into the west, we elves, or dwindle to a rustic folk of dell and cave. The proverbial little people of British mythology. Leprechauns and such. What do you wish? What do you want? That what should be shall be. Okay, thanks a lot. That's a big help. I wish, if I could wish anything, the One Ring had never been around. Yeah, well, wishes, you know. You are wise and fearless. I will give you the One Ring if you ask for it. I will give you. And she laughs and she kind of goes all evilly for a moment and then does what? I pass the test. I will diminish and go into the west and remain Galadriel. That is, I will be a nobody. I don't want power. Because what would it give her? She says, instead of the Dark Lord, you'll set up a queen. I shall not be dark, but beautiful and terrible as the morning and the night, and everybody will love me and despair. Not really the effect you usually associate with love. Okay? So, Frodo says, I got one question before we go. And I meant to ask Gandalf this. I am permitted to wear the One Ring. Why can't I see all the others? That is, I've worn this thing before. How come I didn't see you? You haven't tried. Probably not the wisest thing to tell him. But she says, you know, only thrice have you set the ring upon your finger since you knew what you possessed. 3 times? Since he knew what he possessed. When did he learn what it was he possessed? Shadow of the past. And then Gandalf goes away for a long time. And he comes back 17 years later, and he goes away and comes back. Okay? So in all that time, Frodo never tried using the ring. When does he first try it? When he and Sam and Pippin leave. He slips it on then briefly. Okay? When else? Prancing Pony. 3rd time? Weathertop. He hasn't used it since then. He's going to. She says, don't try, it'll destroy you. You would have to become far stronger, and you would have to train your will to the domination of others. That is, other wills. Tolkien, in his essay on fairy stories, talks about the difference between enchantment and magic. Enchantment, he says, is shared enrichment. That's like going up to somebody with this book and saying, you really ought to read this. You'll just love this. I'm not going to use Mikey as an example. The first 150 pages, you'll just be right in. When I first read this, it took me like 3 tries. I think it was after I got about 150 pages in that finally I got bit.
Listen, I'm like 250.
Okay? I understand. Believe me.
I'm enjoying it. I'm just trying really hard.
The first book of the Game of Thrones series, Song of Fire and Ice, got it when it first printed edition. I tried that sucker probably half a dozen times. I got 150, 200 pages in. I finally threw it away. Literally gave it away because I couldn't read that crap. Because to me, it was crap. This took me 3 times. Third time was a charm. Because once I got in that third time, I read the whole thing in like 2 days. And then I probably read it 30 or 40 times since then. Okay? I think I was 15 or 17. All right? Tolkien says, shared enrichment says, here, I want you to see this. Why? So that you experience what I experience. Magic is domination of wills and things. Magic is, you must read this because I'm going to make you, kind of do this. Or, Wingardium Leviosa, the poor little feather there in Flitwick doesn't have any choice whether or not. Okay? Imperious takes our will. Don't do it, Frodo. She says, you don't have the strength. So they get ready to leave, and she and her ladies give gifts to the various members of the fellowship. What do they get? For example, what does Aragorn get?
He gets a sheath for his sword.
Sheath for a sword. Why? What about that sheath with that sword? The sheath drawn from this sword. The sword drawn from this sheath will what? Never break. Because what happened to it previously in its earlier life? It broke, So that's not going to happen. What did she give Boromir? Big old WWE wrestling buckle. Solid gold. Why? Because he's a warrior, and it's gold, and it's big and manly. Okay? What did she give Legolas?
He gets an awesome bow.
A bow and a quiver. Okay? It's kind of like the never empty quiver. He just keeps pulling, and they're there. Okay? What does Sam get?
He gets dirt from our orchard.
He gets rope and
soil
dirt.
From our orchard. Yeah.
So that at the end, when he goes back to the Shire and all the trees have been cut down, he takes a single grain of soil and puts it in every tree that he plants, and they're all wonderful, majestic trees. What does Frodo get?
He's the file.
The Phial of Galadriel, which has what in it?
The light of Elendil.
The Light of Eärendil. Okay? So why is this light important? Who was Eärendil? Well, the tale that Aragorn told them, of the tale of Luthien and Beren, Eärendil was a descendant of Luthien and Beren, who took the Silmaril that Beren took from Morgoth's crown, and he went over to the gods, tried to go over to the gods, this is after the world had been turned, tried to go over to the gods to get them to do what? To come over and help in the battle against Morgoth. All right? He makes it to the gods, but they don't really allow him to go back to Middle-earth. What do they do to him? They turn him into a star. So that the Silmaril in Eärendil are this star. This, by the way, this is the beginning of the whole Middle-earth saga. Tolkien read when he was about, 18, 20 or so. He read a poem in Old English. It's called one of the Advent lyrics. Lyrics about the birth of Christ. And in this Advent lyric is this half line, Eala Eärendil. Eala just means low. Eärendil just means morning star. Okay? Christ is the morning star. Satan is referred to as the son of the morning star. All right? Eala Eärendil. Tolkien takes that and he starts creating what becomes the whole Middle-earth stuff. Okay? So, the Star of Eärendil is captured in the Phial of Galadriel. Why is this important? Because we're going to see later on, not today, Sam comes to a realization. We're in the same tale that Aragorn told us back on Weathertop. We are in the tale of Beren and Luthien. Beren and Luthien have just left the book. Their chapters are done. Our chapters are ongoing. There are more chapters to come. Okay? So, let's see, we've done, what do Merry and Pippin get?
They get cool little belts and swords.
They all get those.
Yeah.
And
The
cloaks and the clasps.
Yeah.
Okay? They also get food, Cliff Bars.
Yeah.
Elvish Cliff Bars. Limbus is what it's called. Okay? So who are we left with? Gimli. Gimli doesn't get anything. And she's like, I didn't know what to give you. Sorry. You didn't give me your Christmas list. And he's like, oh, that's okay. But what would you want? He's, I don't dare ask. No, not really. What do you want? I said, okay, if you're going to force me, I would take a strand of your hair. And the elves are ready to do what? You're dead.
Yeah. Kill him.
You're a dwarf and you want a strand of, you're dead. You forget. No. And she's like, wow, Gimli, untouched. What would you do with hair? And he says, I would encase it in perfect crystal, and it would be the most valuable heirloom of all the dwarves. And she's like, oh, Gimli, nobody's ever spoken to me that way. Celebrimbor's sitting back there going, what gives, lady? And so what does she do? She pulls out three strands of hair. So then they all leave. They get in the boats, get on the river, and who do they realize is still following them? Because we've not talked about him at all. Gollum. Gollum followed them to the edge of Lothlorien, and now he's following them again. So we come to chapter 10, the breaking of the fellowship. Okay? Where do they arrive and stop? They arrive at a place called Parth Galen. Okay? They're going down the Great River, and they get to the spot where there's a huge waterfall. Think Niagara. They can't go over this in their little elvish boats. Okay? So, they've got to go on. And Aragorn says, all right, Frodo, where are we heading? Frodo's like, well, I got to go to Mordor, and Boromir's got to go home. Aragorn's already said to Boromir, I will come to Minas Tirith. He didn't say how he would come to Minas Tirith, whether he'd come by the direct route or the roundabout way. So Frodo says, I got to have time. Let me decide. Because he didn't think about this point. Why not? What was he thinking when they left Rivendell? He's got the big G-man behind him, right? Gandalf's going to tell him where to go. Fly you! And he doesn't have Gwaihir the Windlord to fly him off to Mordor. So, they all land on the shore, and Frodo says, give me an hour. And he starts to walk. And after a while, Boromir gets up and leaves. At pages 397 and following. Boromir finds Frodo. They're at Amon Hen. They're not at the top. We're going to talk about Amon Hen in a moment. And Boromir tries to convince Frodo to do what?
Give him the ring.
Before that, take it to Minas Tirith. He doesn't say initially, give me the ring, you little midget, or I'm going to kill you. He could. He doesn't. He says, take it to Minas Tirith. We can protect it there. Okay, so if you won't do that, give me the ring. Let me use it, and I'll do what? I'll ride the power and glory, etc. So Frodo says, thanks, Boromir. You really helped me make up my mind. It's not how you want. And he puts on the ring and disappears. He runs up to the top of the mountain, and there's a big stone chair. And he climbs up into the big stone chair. He still has the ring on. What does he see? Page 400. Can't see much at first. He's in a world of mist. Why? He's in the Wraith world, so to speak. But he looks up to the north, and what does he see? He sees all the way up to the Misty Mountains. He sees orcs pouring. Shut up, Siri. He sees orcs pouring out of the Misty Mountains. He sees the land of the Barrenings on fire. Okay? That's not good. He looks a little closer to home. He sees the riders of Rohirrim riding across, the plains of Rohan. So that's north and kind of northeast, and now he turns east. He sees Barad-dûr, the Tower of Mordor. He looks a little farther south and east, and he sees Mount Doom. Flame goes back to the tower for a second. There's an eye, 401. Then suddenly he felt the eye. There was an eye in the dark tower that did not sleep. He knew that it had become aware of his gaze, and it's doing what? It's going pew, pew, pew. It's triangulating. It's getting narrower and narrower and narrower. And Frodo realizes, pretty soon it's going to see me. And he hears himself crying out, never, never, or was it, verily I come to you. Never, never is who?
Are you saying who is saying that?
Louder.
The real him.
Who?
Frodo.
The real Frodo. Okay, so then who is the verily I come to you? That's the ring. We're going to hear another point late in the novel, like really late in the novel, where a voice is going to come out of something. And it's not clear whether the voice is coming out of Frodo or something else. It's not clear if the voice is Frodo's or something else's voice. Okay? And then there's a third voice in his mind, so to speak. A power comes to his mind and says, take it off. Take it off. Fool! Take it off. Take off the ring. The two powers strove in him. And for a moment, he was aware of himself again. Frodo, neither the voice nor the eye, free to choose, with one remaining instant, takes the ring off. Notice, for a moment, he was aware of himself. Who's the voice? Guesses?
Somebody ruined it for me in this book. I wrote it down previously.
Oh, you got a used copy. Oh.
Ooh.
Gandalf.
Yeah. No one calls him fool. I'm thinking playful insult.
Who does call other people fool regularly? Gandalf does. Fool of a tuck. Throw yourself in next time. Okay? Later on, he's going to call Pippin a fool again. Okay? Which we'll get to in a moment. So, they all start running after Frodo because they realize Frodo's gone and Boromir's gone. Aragorn's like, this can't be good. So Merry and Pippin go run one way. Boromir comes down. He says, Frodo, put on the ring. Aragorn's like, what'd you do? I'll tell you later. Go after the two hobbits. So Boromir goes after Merry and Pippin. Aragorn says, Sam, come with me. Aragorn, probably. Sam. Aragorn's legs are taller than Sam is tall. How is Sam going to follow him with his little stubby midget legs? Not very well. Okay? So Sam actually shows us a little brains here. He thinks, okay, so what's Mr. Frodo going to do? Well, he doesn't want us to die. He's going to go off by himself. Not without me, he's not. So he runs back down and he sees one of the boats going off into the river by itself. Wait, Mr. And he jumps. Frodo rescues Sam. Sam punches holes in the boats so they can't follow. And the book ends right there. Breaking of Fellowship. This is July 29th, 1954. First volume ends. Now you have to wait until November 11th for the Two Towers to be published. Okay? Notice, not as long as you had to wait for the Harry Potter books. Okay?
Was this popular back then?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of an immediate bestseller. Okay? And then you have to wait. So the second volume is published in 1954. Then you have to wait almost a year before the Return of the King. Okay? And if this is a cliffhanger, it's nothing compared to the end of the Two Towers. I mean, the Two Towers, everything hangs in a balance. So we pick up and we get the departure of Boromir. Well, where's he departing to? Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask a question about fellowship, just jumping back to Tolkien. Galadriel said when the ring, if Frodo succeeds, then the ring will lose power. That's obvious, I get that. But why would the elves have to leave? Like, have to leave?
Well, it's not that she says they have to leave, but she says we will dwindle. Okay. And she says we'll have to live in caves and such. Why? What's one of the things that keeps the elves, quote unquote, in power? It's the power of the rings. Okay? So what she's implying there, well, who have the other... Nah, I'm not going to ask that question. What she's implying there is the elves will grow less and less. It doesn't mean they'll die, because they are immortal. They can be killed. Immortal doesn't mean you can't be killed. Take Legolas, cut his head off, and he doesn't go, hi, and hold his head up like, the Green Knight and Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. No, he'll be dead. His spirit will go off to the halls of Mandos for a while. They'll reknit the head and everything back together, and he gets reincarnated in Tolkien's cosmology. Okay? Until the end of time, Tolkien's cosmology again, there will come a time when Iluvatar will remake the world. This is Tolkien's Christianity finding its way in. Guess what happens at that point? Elves don't have a place in that remade world, nor do dwarves. Only we do. Why? Because we're the only ones, quote unquote, kind of made in the image of Iluvatar. The dwarves are made by one of the Ainur, Ollie the Smith. He kind of comes up with them. Iluvatar's a little upset, and he goes, okay, I'll let you keep them for a while. They can be your playthings, so to speak. Elves, this is in Tolkien's manuscript material. It blew my mind. I was working on something related to Tolkien. I had his manuscripts in front of me, and I'm reading on along here. Whoa! Elves are tied to the physical world. It's like they get their being from the dirt of earth. So when that dirt is destroyed and remade, poof, elves are gone. Okay? Same thing kind of. They don't have a place in the recreated, remade world. So, the departure of Boromir. How does Boromir die? Honorably. Okay?
He feels bad for trying to steal the ring, and then Aragorn says that no. You died valiantly.
What did he do in his death? Aragorn tells him what? He says, no, you have conquered. Conquered what? Is he merely talking about the 20 or 30 orcs, or the film version, 20 or 30,000 orcs that, he's killed? No. What's he conquered?
Power of the wall of the ring.
He overcame that. What did he do before he ran back down? Frodo, I'm sorry. It was a madness. Well, what was the madness? It was the temptation of the ring. What will happen to any mortal, Frodo, who possesses the ring? It will possess them. Boromir didn't even possess the ring. But what motivates Boromir? Power. He wants power. Why? He wants to be a good king. I'm not saying Boromir is evil. He's not Lord Voldemort evil. He needs power to do what? To rule. Kind of like Dumbledore and Grindelwald. All right? So, Aragorn, no. You've overcome, you've conquered. Few have gained such a victory. Be at peace. Minas Tirith shall not fail. He kind of gives Boromir, his absolution so that he can die in peace. Boromir dies. We find out Merry and Pippin are captured. So what do they do to Boromir?
take his weapons, put them with him, and then all the orcs.
They take his weapons, they take all the orcs' weapons, they put him in one of the boats, okay? They kind of prop him up against the wall of the boat. I mean, the boat has like a little house in it. Put everything around him. They put his horn, that's been cloven in two now, on his waist, and they send him off the river. You know, good Viking burial. Only thing that's missing is the arrow, burning arrow and stuff. And then they each sing a song about the north wind, the south wind, the west wind. And Gimli's like, yeah, leave me the east wind. And they were going, no, we're not going to sing about that one because that'd be borrowing trouble. Chapter 2, Riders of Rowan.
I have a question.
Yes.
Didn't you say that Sam had holes in the boats?
Yes, I did, didn't I?
Okay.
So how did they get a boat without holes in it? Did Sam forget one? Or did they patch one?
Well, did they say?
Or is this one of the little errors that Tolkien says I'm not going to address?
I think it is because they said this was one of the two, and one of the boats were already gone. When they came back, when him, Gimli, Legolas came back, there's only two boats.
Yeah, the other sunk.
Well, no, I mean like literally only two to begin with. There were no more than two. What this said, he said one of the boats is gone.
Oh,
The
yeah.
other one is here.
Yeah. So they chase after the Rohirrim. They chase after the orcs with Merry and Pippin. And they run and 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 run. Good thing they have Legolas with them because he's got good eyesight. And we're going to skip a bunch. They find at one point, through the grass, there's a little trail that goes off. What do they find in the trail? A couple things. The brooch and what else? Little tiny footprints. So one of the hobbits was alive and in his own power when he went off. Doesn't mean he stayed alive at that point, but they don't find a little hobbit body. So, third day comes, and they keep running. Next morning comes. Legolas says, uh-oh, not good. Red dawn. Why is it red? Because there's smoke burning off in the distance. Okay. Next morning, they see the riders coming. Page 431. So Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, they see all these riders coming, over 100, coming at them. And they sit down in the grass and they pull their elven cloaks around them and they look like rock. So the elves get about halfway past them. That is, you've got over 100 elves. They're riding, possibly in single file, maybe two abreast.
These are the Riders of Rowan.
These are the Riders of Rowan. They get about 50 by. Aragorn jumps up. What news from the north? Riders of Rowan. And those riders just whoop, and make a circle. They don't just circle, however. They circle and they pull out their spears. And the chief of the riders says, "Who are you? What are you doing?" Aragorn, "I'm called Strider." Come on, no, orcs. The rider leaps and says, "I thought you were orcs." "No, you're not orcs, but this isn't how you hunt orcs, so who are you really? How did you spring out of the grass? That is, how come I didn't see you? Are you elves?" Aragorn, "No, well, one is him, the guy with the pointy ears, you know. But we have passed through Lothlorien, and the gifts and favor of the lady go with us." Eobar's eyes get really big. "Then there is a lady in the Golden Wood." What does that mean? Just that. Okay, he's never been there.
Legend.
Why else? Legend. There is a lady. In other words, I've heard stories. As old tales tell. Few escape her nets, they say. These are strange days. Maybe you are net weavers and sorcerers. And then he looks at Legolas and Gimli. "Why do you not speak?" Notice, Gimli rose and planted his feet firmly apart. Okay, so Gimli gets up off the ground. So how much bigger is he?
Very much.
Not a lot. I mean, if he's sitting on the ground, he's maybe 2 feet tall. So now he's standing up. He's maybe 4 feet tall. And Gimli says, give me your name, horse master, and I will give you mine and more besides. In other words, you tell me who you are, and then I'll tell you who I am. Excuse me, old boy, but the stranger should declare himself first. You know, this is my land, little man. I am named Aylmer, son of Aylmer, and I'm called the third Marshal of Riddermark. It's a pretty fancy title. Sounds good. Gimli. Then Aylmer, son of Aylmer, third Marshal of Riddermark, let Gimli the dwarf Gloinson, like everybody's going to know who that is, warn you against foolish words. You speak evil of that which... And now he just doesn't shut up. You speak evil of that which is fair beyond the reach of your thought, and only little wit can excuse you. You speak evil of that which is fair beyond the reach of your thought. Your mind is not able to comprehend the fairness, the beauty of Galadriel. Okay, so slam. And the only excuse you have for you is your little wit. Your little thought. Aylmer's eyes blaze. The men of Rowan murmur, and they close in. That is, maybe the diameter of the horses have been, 20 feet. You know, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli in the middle, probably carrying 6 to 8 foot spears. Those might be sticking out 4 feet from them. So 20 feet, 4 feet, 4 feet, so 12 feet, and they come in closer. So those spears are now a couple feet away. I would cut off your head, beard, and all, Master Dwarf, if it stood but a little bit higher from the ground. If I could reach it. Legolas, he stands not alone, bending his bow and fitting an arrow with hands that move quicker than sight. So Legolas has been kind of sitting here like this, and he goes, he stands not alone. And they don't see his hands move, but he's suddenly, like this. Kind of like in some of the Mel Brooks films, like Robin Hood, Prince of Men in Tights, where guys arm themselves very, very quickly. Aylmer raises his sword. And notice, things might have gone ill. Really, you think. Aragorn gets between them. He says, calm down. Can we talk before you kill us? He goes, okay. Who do you serve? You serve Sauron. It's almost like he's channeling Bob Dylan. You got to serve somebody, if you're familiar with the Dylan song. Do you serve Sauron? I serve only the Lord of the Mark. That's it. We know there's war brewing, but what? We desire only to be free, to live as we have lived, keeping our own, serving no foreign lord, good or evil. We just want the rest of the world to go away and leave us alone. That's it. Just leave us alone. Who do you serve? Where are you hunting orcs in my land? Aragorn. I serve no man. Okay, now that could be read as meaning I'm an outlaw. And I have no lord. I have no one I swear allegiance to. But the servants of Sauron I pursue into whatever land they may go. In other words, borders schmorders. I don't care about your borders. Your little rules, your little laws, okay, I understand you've got to follow me. If there are orcs, I will hunt them. Okay? There are few among mortal men who don't talk to me about orcs, sonny boy. There are few among mortal men who know more of them than I do. He says, oh, by the way, I'm not weaponless. Because what do they see? 3 guys dressed in cloaks. Okay, so Gimli's kind of, throwing his cloak back, and he's got his axe sitting here like it's in a holster. He's going to unflip the holster latch. He's going to do a quick draw. Legolas has already knocked an arrow. He's pointing it. What does Aragorn do? Throws back his cloak. The elven sheath glitters as he grasps it, and whips the sword out. And he cries out, Elendil, I am Aragorn, son of Arathorn, and am called. Okay, notice, I am Aragorn, son of Arathorn. That's what I call myself. Other people call me Elisar, Elfstone, Dunadan, heir of Isildur, Elendil, son of Gondor. Okay, those last four, each one of those is kind of important. Here's the sword that was broken and is forged again. You gonna help me or try to stop me? Tick-tock. Time's a-wasting. Gimli and Legolas looked at their companion in amazement. Why? They'd not seen him in this mood before. Well, what does Tolkien mean by mood? Are they just kind of amazed? Wow, Aragorn's never really spoken out for himself like this before. Way to go. He's been taking that assertiveness training is working for him. Is that what he means?
Finally accepted the position.
No, because that's a reading based on the film. Whether you've seen it or not, that's a reading based on the film. Because in the film version, Aragorn is a reluctant hero. Aragorn is somebody who is addled with self-doubt. He's an existential hero. I don't know. Can I really do this? Will Arwen and I ever really be together? Will the sword that was broken really be reforged and not break again? Stay tuned next week for it. It's kind of the mentality, okay? Tolkien means by mood here, they've never seen him in this fashion. Has he ever, quote-unquote, revealed himself like this? No, not at Rivendell. What does he say? He says, I'm just the heir of Isildur. Here he says, I am called Elisar, Elfstone, Dunadan. Other people call me this. Okay? He seemed to grow in stature while Eomer had shrunk. In his living face, they caught a brief vision of the power and majesty of the kings of stone. What kings of stone?
The ones on the sides of the river.
On the sides of the river, you have, just before the falls of Rauros, Elendil, Isildur. Back in the 1970s, a couple of artists named the Hildebrandt brothers, Greg and I can't remember the other brother's name, they used to do illustrated calendars of the Lord of the Rings, fantasy literature, other stuff. Theirs, I think, are some of the best illustrations, and I still have one of these. Nerd. It's just beautiful illustration. And these statues that we're talking about are several hundred feet tall. I mean, they make Mount Rushmore look like Play-Doh. Okay? I mean, these things are huge. Hildebrandt. Okay? So, they look at Aragorn, they're like, yeah, I see the similarity. Eomer, notice, steps back. Well, let me back up. Legolas sees with his elvish eyes a white flame flickered on the brows of Aragorn like a shining crown. That's the elf stone. What's the elf stone referred to? He doesn't actually have one, but he is the descendant of the guy who got the Silmarils. Eomer steps back, looks at the ground. These are indeed strange days. Dreams and legends spring to life out of the grass. Tell me, Lord. So why does Aragorn say, I serve no man? Yeah. Name someone who's above me. Anyone. Denethor's not. He's the steward of Gondor. Aragorn isn't the king of Gondor, but he's the heir apparent. Theoden? He's a king. He's a king of what?
Horse people.
A muddy hall. Okay? And there aren't that many else. So, what brings you here? What's the meaning of the dark words? We know about Boromir being gone. Yeah. What doom do you bring out of the north? Aragorn, the doom of choice. Notice, the doom of choice. The judgment of judgment. Because every time you make a judgment, what do? You choose. Okay? He says, you got to tell this to Theoden, son of Thingol. War's coming. You can't just sit by. You can't play Switzerland in this one. You have to choose. Okay? He says, we're chasing the orcs because there were friends of ours among them. We didn't find any but orcs. And he goes, you sure? Because they were dressed like us. You kind of rode right past us. Yeah. He goes, forgot about that. They would have been like children. Halflings. One of the writers. They are only a little people in old songs and children's tales out of the north. Okay, now what could Aragorn do at this point? Sword that was broken? Use modern terminology. Excalibur. It says written right there. Excalibur. Tale out of the north. Golden Lady of the Golden Wood. Fairy tale. Do we walk in legends or on the green earth in the daylight? What does he mean, or on the green earth in the daylight? The real world. This isn't a fairy tale. Aragorn, a man may do both. Yeah, really? How? How many of you have, quote unquote, walked in legends? You're just walking on along, fat, dumb, and happy one day, and suddenly you're in legend land, right? For not we, but those who come after will make the legends of our time. Think of our world today, looking on the past, who, let's say in United States history, in the last 100 years, made the legends of our time. That is, what people did something within the last 100 years that now we look on kind of as being legendary. Tom Brokaw wrote a book about it called The Greatest Generation. People your age who did what in World War II? Normandy invasion. And for the guys who didn't do the Normandy invasion, what about most of the women who didn't become wags or whacks, etc.? Rosie to the River. What happened in Normandy couldn't have happened in Normandy if the women weren't, quote unquote, manning the factories and putting up legends. Yeah, that's kind of legendary. Why? Because we've been asking, our country's been asking for the last 30 or 40 years, will there be another generation like that? That when the time comes, will step up to the plate? Because those 17, 18-year-olds who stormed Normandy, my uncle was 17 when he was on the 6th landing wave of Okinawa, who stormed Okinawa, who had to go in and clear the caves of the Japanese soldiers, 17 years old. Imagine the horrors. The green earth, that's a mighty matter of legend, though you tread it under the light of day. In other words, don't speak so lightly of the green earth. You think you know what it is. And the writer says, tick-tock, Lord, we should be going. Amber, shh, shut up. Okay? So, Aragorn and Amber go off and talk. Aragorn tells them what's happened so far. Doesn't mention the ring. He does mention, oh, by the way, Gandalf the Grey, dead. So, Aragorn says, I can't abandon my friends when there's still hope. Aragorn, bottom of 437. There is no hope. They're dead. You won't find them. Well, then what happened to them? I don't know. Maybe they were slain and burned among the orcs, but that you will say cannot be, and I do not fear it. Notice they never entertained the possibility, well, maybe the orcs got hungry. Orcs do eat orcs. Why not a couple of fat, tasty little hobbits? Anyways, Aragorn reminds them, they were dressed like we are. He goes, I'd forgotten that. The world is all grown strange. Elf and dwarf, in company, walk in our daily fields. And folks speak with the Lady of the Wood and yet live. The sword comes back to war that was broken. How shall a man judge what to do in such times? What does he mean in such times? The world for him is what? Exactly. flipped upside down, which would seem to imply right and wrong are also flipped upside down. How can I understand what to do? Aragorn, as he is ever judged, good and ill have not changed since yesteryear. In other words, what was good before, if it was really good, is still good. What was ill is still ill. For nor are they one thing among elves and dwarves and another among men. This is Tolkien in the 1940s, taking a shot at the idea that all truth or all morality is relative. That what might be good for one society might not be good for another society. And what might be ill for one society might be good for another society. How can he say that? Our kind of modern mentality says, well, that's wrong. Everybody should be equal. All societies should be viewed equally. All ideologies should be viewed equally. Right or wrong? That's a question. Right or wrong, not whether they are right or wrong. If you accept that, if you believe that is true, then you cannot say Hitler was wrong. Because for Hitler's purposes, Hitler was right. If you say all cultures are equal, or all moralities are equal, there is no reason to condemn Hitler. There is no reason to condemn skinheads. There is no reason to condemn modern-day Nazis. There is no reason to condemn people who fly planes into buildings, because that's what's good for them. It brings about their, etc., etc. Okay? This is why Tolkien's kind of saying, no, we fought a war for that. World War I. We fought a war for that. World War II. It is a man's part to do what? Discern the difference between good and ill. As much in the golden wood, meaning where? Out there in La La Land, out there in Neverwhere, as well as in his own house. Okay, you have a question? Oh. Elmer, yeah, you're right. The only difference is I am not free to do what I want to do. Why not? King. Not king, king. I have to do what the king says. You, who's going to tell you what to do? You can do whatever you want. Aragorn, yeah, but I don't think the laws that were made for this kind of situation. In other words, he says, I'm not a stranger here. I haven't seen you before, for you're young, but I have spoken with Aemon. I knew your father. And I've spoken with Ed, son of Thingol. Never before would any of those lords have told me I couldn't go. So, what does Éomer do? All right, I'll give you 3 horses. Just return them, please. And when you're done looking for your dead friends, go to Mediceld, kind of turn yourselves in, etc. So, they go off, and they go to the forest. Louder?
Gimli wouldn't take one of those.
Yeah, Gimli wouldn't take one of the horses because, he's short. So he rides with Legolas. They look around the battle site, and what do they notice? Little teeny tiny footprints that go off. They go to the edge of Fangorn Forest. They see something in Fangorn. And then we go back to, meanwhile, back with Merry and Pippin. And we get the chapter of the Uruk Hai, which I'm going to skip all of.
Yeah, with a lot.
Okay? So we get to Merry and Pippin escape, and they go into Fangorn. And they climb up a little rise, and they're talking about how nice it looks from in there. And Merry says, page 463, the wind's changing. It's turned east again. It feels cool up here. Pippin, I'm afraid this is only a passing gleam. and it will all go gray again. What a pity. The shaggy old forest looked so different in the sunlight. I almost felt I liked the place. Home, 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 you know. Almost felt you liked the forest. The voice of Treebeard is based on C.S. Lewis, who was good friends with Tolkien at this time, who had a booming voice. Tolkien apparently did not. And so what happens? So they talk to Treebeard. They tell Treebeard what's been going on and what's been happening. And they keep referring to Gandalf, page 465 and following, in the past tense. Treebeard. And did you know Gandalf, page 466? They ask Treebeard, did you know him? Merry asks, yes, I do know him. The only wizard that really cares about trees. Do you know him? Yes, we did. He was a great friend. He was our guide. Okay. So you speak of Gandalf like a person whose story has come to an end, and they tell him. He's like, So what do they do with Treebeard, or more specifically, what does Treebeard do with them? Takes them off to his house, right? And does what? Feeds them. Doesn't really feed them. He gives them drink. They drink an int draft. And it's beer straight from the int, so to speak. And what happens to them? Well, it begins happening almost immediately. They go from being about 2.5 feet to, by the end of the novel, they're over 4 feet tall. Tallest of the hobbits. Okay? Doesn't mean that if they keep drinking int draft, they'll get, 8, whatever. What else happens as a result of their meeting? Treebeard calls an int moot. What's a moot? Council, court. Okay? For what purpose?
To discuss what they're going to do. I only know this from the films.
Okay? What's the purpose of the int moot? Who is one of the people they tell Treebeard about? Saruman. Saruman, the White Wizard of Isengard who lives at Orthanc. And he says what? Well, I can't do things about the bigger problems in the world, but I can take care of Saruman. Because where does he live? Okay, which is where in relation to Fangorn?
Right.
Border. On the border. And what has Saruman been doing?
Burning down trees.
Burning down his trees. What is Treebeard?
Tree
He's
shepherd.
more than a tree. He's an int. A shepherd of trees. Okay? Shepherd of trees. So he doesn't like it when he finds out people burning down his trees. So they have the int moot, and they march on Isengard. Chapter 5, The White Rider. 491, they're talking about Fangorn and such. They see something. A man in gray and such. 493, the man finally breaks the silence when he quickens his pace, catches up to them. It says, won't you climb down or shall I climb up? Gimli, no, Legolas. What does Gimli mean? Well, what did he tell Legolas to do on 492? You get an opportunity, put a few in him. Now, Gimli, kill him. Did I not say that I wish to speak to you? Put away that bow, Master Elf, and the bow and arrow fall from Gimli's hand. And you put away your axe, and Gimli drops his. Okay? They ask him, what's your name? He goes, don't you know? 494. They kind of are a little perturbed, and he jumps away quickly, throws his cloak take it back. He doesn't throw his cloak. When he moves quickly, his cloak opens up. And what do they see? Bright, shining light. Bright, shining, right? And Gimli says, Saruman. But the old man was too quick. He springs to his feet, leaps to the top of a large rock. Legolas shoots an arrow. What happens to that arrow when it leaves the bow? Bursts into flame. Aragorn pulls out the sword, and flame runs up it. Now, this isn't just mere, special effects description. This is kind of telling us, for a moment, it is flame. Gimli's axe flies out of his hand, and we hear Legolas, Mithrandir. Mithrandir is the Elvish name for Gandalf. Why does Legolas see him first?
That's great vision.
That and elf. Kind of existing on the other side. Not like Glorfindel, because he's not an elf. He's just a lowly little peon elf. Okay? Aragorn, beyond all hope, you return to us in our need. Gimli, but you're white now. Duh. Yes, I am white now. Indeed, I am Saruman, one might almost say, as he should have been. I have passed through fire and deep water since we parted. So they talk. He tells them about the Ents, Fangorn, etc., 499. Aragorn, Ents? You mean there is truth in the old legends about the dwellers in the deep forests? Legolas is like, what? They're not just legends. Okay, who told Eothane earlier? You can walk in the legends and in the light under the sun. Aragorn is, for all intents and purposes, what? A living legend. Okay? Imagine for a moment. If somebody were to show up today in Windsor Palace, Windsor Castle, and say, hi, I'm Arthur. And they didn't think he was crazy. And it had the quote-unquote proof of being King Arthur. The real thing. I mean, I know, it's fantasy. But imagine it being real. What effect would that have? Let's say, I don't know, on the Queen. I bet you William would sit back there going, damn, that means I'm never going to be king. Because if he's still alive, and Charles is probably going, Charles would be thinking, how do I kill this tree? Okay? He says, no, Treebeard is Fangorn, Gandalf says. The tree of trees. The shepherd of trees. Okay? So he says, Treebeard has met Merry and Pippin. And what has happened? He says, they have set off what is like the first fall of a stone that causes many others. Well, what's the image? An avalanche. Where did that first stone actually fall? Fool of a took. Throw yourself in next time. Gandalf wouldn't be what he now is if Pippin hadn't dropped the stone in the well in the mines of Moria. Okay? So, he tells them where he's been, pages 502 and following. Tells them what happened. We fell, that is, when the bridge broke, we fell a long way, landed in water, and then we started running up, he says, the endless stair, which comes all the way out where there's a door on the roof of the world, so to speak, at the top of Mount Caradhras, the same mountain that wouldn't let them get over. The Balrog comes through this door before Gandalf, and as soon as it hits the outside air, poof, bursts into flame. And what does Gandalf say he do? I threw him down. 502, middle of the page. I threw down my enemy, and he fell from the high place and broke the mountainside where he smote it in his ruin. And that is almost an exact copy of what is described in, I don't have it written in my book, and I should. It's either Ezekiel or Daniel to describe Satan being thrown out of heaven. and where he smote the earth in his ruin, etc. Okay? Then darkness took me, and I strayed out of thought and time, wandered on far on roads I will not tell. What does that mean? Wandered out of thought and time. How can you go out of time?
Doesn't exist.
Death. He died. He wasn't mostly dead. He didn't need Miracle Max to come bring him a pill. He died. Okay? Naked I was sent back. By who? Not Galadriel. Either a Iluvatar or a Manwë. That is, walking out of thought and time means he went to Valinor and was sent back from there. Naked? Well, that can mean literally naked. He didn't have any clothes on. Reborn. Naked as a bodiless spirit. Okay? So I lay upon the mountaintop naked. The tower behind was crumbled to dust, the window gone. He says I was alone, forgotten, without escape. And there I just lay, and I just watched the stars. Look at the pretty stars. Inquire the Windlord came. Why? Because what happened between when he fell and Gwaihir the Windlord coming? Not only the battle where he destroyed the Balrog, but what else? Aragorn leads the others, and they go to Lothlorien. And what do they tell Galadriel? Gandalf fell in Moria. And she gets on her little telegraph and sends the word. So Gwaihir starts looking all over, and there he finds him. Okay? We get the King of the Golden Hall. Yeah, we don't have time. We'll pick up with the King of the Golden Hall when we get back. Gotta make up the time somehow.